Hi, I'm Michael Wan, your host for Michael Wan's Op-Ed Live, and this is Jeffrey Prang, our proud LA County Assessor. How are you doing, sir?
Doing great. Great to be with you.
Great. Our show, Op-Ed Live, is not about left or right. It's finding out about what's right or wrong. So, Jeffrey, the Democrats are screaming Trump impeachment again. What is your thought? Are you happy about it?
I'm not, well, I don't think you ever could be happy about the issue of impeachment. Okay. Impeachment means that we are in a national crisis.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's healthy for the country. Mm-hmm. But the most recent revelations are serious and merit the attention of all Americans and the attention of Congress. It is my view, based on what I have read, that he has the president has crossed the line multiple times on issues which I think merit impeachment, high crimes and misdemeanors. But engaging a foreign power to investigate your political opponent and to hold back foreign aid contingent upon that type of investigation is treasonous. It is specifically prohibited in the Constitution. It is alarming that he would attempt to engage foreign governments to help him in his 2020 re-election bid. It is while it is unlikely, as we discussed before the show, that the Senate will approve it, but I think it is imperative that the House of Representatives put the issues before the American people to identify the violations of law. Whether they choose to actually remove him from office or not does not take away from their obligation to be transparent and to hold this president accountable.
Did you read the transcript, Jeff?
I did.
Where in that line did he mention that he's going to withhold the money, the aid?
So he didn't say it in the transcript, but he did it through his actions. He directed the State Department to withhold and to delay the transfer of about a quarter $2 billion in military aid until after they had this conversation. And during this conversation, he specifically asked the president of Ukraine for a favor. And he further crossed a line by inserting the United States Attorney General into a political investigation with a foreign government. I'm very concerned as well that the transcript seems to be incomplete.
Yeah, it wasn't a verbatim transcript.
Right. So there's elements, there's additional conversation, from that discussion between the two presidents that I think needs to come out.
What I think is when he mentioned about he asked to look into Joe Biden's shenanigans, right? You don't think that's a shenanigan, what he did? What Joe Biden did to Ukraine, for the former president, that he said that he told Ukraine president, hey, pretty much, stop investigating his son. His son was about to get interviewed by the prosecutors in Ukraine because of the shenanigans, what he did. And if you think about Hunter Biden, he was a cocaine addict, right? He got kicked out of the military because of that. And right after that, he somehow, I don't know why they treated him like some kind of a business genius, but he became a board member of that Ukraine natural gas company, and not just that, even in China too. So to me, I don't think there's nothing wrong for him to ask for that. What went wrong? Because what happened? Ukraine president did fire the attorney general there in Ukraine right before the interview was supposed to happen, and this is according to the Hill's John Solomon. He's an investigative reporter who got numerous awards. So I go with that. To me, it sounds like the Democrats always do the exact opposite. They're doing what they're accusing Trump people or the Republicans doing. Exactly the same with the Russia collusion thing. To me, I think the Democrats colluded with Russia. You know where that Trump dossier came from. It came from Russians. And then stopped by Christopher Steele, and then went all the way back to the Democrats. They gave it to the FBI, and that's how, they wiretapped Carter Page. I interviewed Carter Page, you know that, right? And that's what he said, what happened to him.
Well, I don't agree with that. I do believe that the Republicans attempt to establish false equivalency between actions of the Democrats and actions of the Republicans, where the Republicans are committing crimes and the Democrats may be doing something else, but they're not issues. But here's the other thing. You cannot talk about what happened with President Trump and say, what about Biden? That's yet one. That's a totally separate issue.
Because the mainstream media, the mainstream media, I have a lot of friends actually there. Mainstream media is the same, they have an incestuous relationship with the Democratic Party. I have to say it. I would say 95%, like LA Times, nobody's going to accuse LA Times of being conservative, or NYT, or WAPO, or CNN. I don't think they're a conservative, news outlet.
It's very difficult to try. It's important to hold our current elected officials accountable. It's very difficult to have that conversation when you immediately go into, what about Hillary? What about Biden?
I'm saying this because this never came out. This never came about because the LA Times or the New York Times, they would never cover these kind of stories.
Let me say a couple things. Just to dispense of the issue of Biden, there's fundamental differences. One, Biden did not try to protect his son. Biden and Western government, Germany and France, European Union nations were all urging the former president of Ukraine to fire that prosecutor because he was not cracking down on corruption. They believed he was covering up corruption.
He was actually doing that same thing. But he was actually cracking down on corruption with Hunter Biden.
No, he was not cracking down on corruption, which is why Western governments, Biden was not by himself. The entire Western alliance was urging them to fire this guy. So Biden, now Biden's son's decision to work for that company, which was under investigation, seemed to be a colossally stupid move. But that happened.
He bragged about it. You know that he bragged about it in front of the press members.
But that happened after these Western governments were pushing Ukraine to terminate. There is no linkage or accusation of wrongdoing. But the fact is, it doesn't matter. The President of the United States attempted to influence a foreign government. It is specific in the Constitution that you cannot attempt to influence them for your own personal political benefit. He said so in the transcript. The transcript is an indictment on its face.
Jeffrey, you've been a long-time guest for our show, and you talked about this a lot. That this is now. We have to just focus on the now, not the past, right? Like, we shouldn't be digging up the past mistakes of Obama or Bush. We have to just focus on the current.
I'm not saying we should.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that because you're never going to have these Democratic papers like NYT, New York Times, or Washington Post. New York Times, when they hired Bret Stephens as a conservative columnist, he's a climate change denier. But he hates Trump more than Democrats. He's a never-Trumper. When they hired him, New York Times lost 6% of their subscription that day. So I understand. If I'm an NYT owner, I would go that route. But what I'm saying is, what they're doing is not right. It is not right. It's corrupt. I consider New York Times a corrupt paper. With the Brett Kavanaugh thing, you know what happened with that. The girl never rememred the rape thing. The sexual assault happened, but they still admitted that fact and ran the story.
So here's what you're saying. There's a new jurisprudence paradigm. So Trump could break the law because you believe that Biden did.
No.
Trump can break the law on this other thing because Hillary may have done something. So if Hillary did something, if Biden did something, if some other Democrat did something, that means that Trump gets permission to break the law as well.
I'll give you equivalence. Yeah, Jeffrey, I get your point. Let me give you some examples of why I really think the media, if I have to pick one thing that's the most corrupt thing that's going on in the United States, is the media. I really believe that, the mainstream media. I was a big-time supporter of Barack Obama. I already told you that, right? Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton. Actually, Hillary Clinton was somebody I really admired back in the day. Not anymore, because I think she's really corrupt. For instance, the New York Times did break the story of the email scandal. I give them credit for that, okay? They did. And also, the New York Times, they did cover the Uranium One scandal. We covered it. I bet if you talk with a regular Joe, they would never know what the Uranium One scandal is. That's what I'm saying. They would write about it just once in 5 years. But they would talk about this Trump-Russia thing on a daily 24-hour cycle. So to me, that's where the corruption lies. They focus too much. To me, the Russia collusion thing, it was a conspiracy theory. Even Robert Mueller. Did you see the Robert Mueller hearing? I couldn't even believe that guy was a special counsel. To me, he didn't seem like he was up to date. He didn't know the facts, what I knew about. He didn't know the company, what Fusion GPS was.
What's kind of interesting is you blame the mainstream media. You say that they're pro-democratic, but the mainstream media, Donald Trump is a product of the mainstream media. He is president today because of the mainstream media. The mainstream media elected Donald Trump. They gave him over $2 billion in free airtime. When he was running for president, he was on the news on a very 5-minute, he had 5 minutes to Hillary's 30 seconds. And he was, they elected him. In fact, even Les Moonves, the former president of CBS, said he's great for ratings, and they kept him on there. And so to somehow or other assume that they're anti-Trump, I think is ridiculous. They elected the man.
I think I agree with you. You're right. I mean, he got $2 billion of free advertisement time, but their intention was not that. You know, if you look at all the articles or all the broadcasting that CNN or MSNBC or Joe Scarborough, I met these people, you know, what they did was, it was heinous, you know, it was pretty much a lot of fake news there, but they just wanted Trump. It was criticizing Trump. It was not, they never praised Trump. Do you remember whether Mika or Joe Scarborough or Don Lemon or Anderson Cooper, all these people, have they ever praised Trump? I don't think that ever happened.
I don't watch those shows. Those are opinion shows.
That's true.
I try to watch.
But you know those shows gets the ratings. That's what many people are watching, right?
Well, that's
actually Don Lemon. He claims that he's downright in the middle. He doesn't consider himself an opinion guy.
Well, when we talk about mainstream media, most of the place where people get media now is not media at all. It's a type of media, but it's opinion. The BBC is where you get news.
I get your point.
I try to find places where we can find comment, where we can all agree that the information is factual, and we can have disagreements over it. But you're not going to listening to Sean Hannity or Rachel Maddow. You're not going to get facts. You're going to get spin.
So I'll go with your premise that we should focus on what's going on right now. Right. So the current president. Okay, if what he did was wrong, to call in, I mean to talk with the Ukraine president Zelensky and tell him about, hey, look into Joe Biden. Like you said, we didn't get the entire transcript, verbatim transcript. It was just highlights, right? If that is wrong, do you consider at least during that time when Obama pressured the Ukraine president and said, he bragged about, he bragged about it in front of press members, that saying, if you don't fire him, then you're not going to get $10 billion. $1 billion, right? Did you hear him say that?
I did not hear that, but based on that context, there's a difference. Because
I can show it to you.
Because what Trump did was for the benefit of his campaign. What the Western European, what the United States and Western European governments did with that prosecutor dealt with public policy, saying we don't want to give money to a government which is not cracking down on corruption. And that prosecutor, who was eventually fired, was widely criticized as allowing corruption to fester in the Ukraine.
But the timing was not right. It was right before when he was about to interview Hunter Biden, they fired him. I mean, did you hear this one? I can't believe you never heard this. What Joe Biden said. You can hear it out.
Loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee.
$1 billion loan guarantee.
I got a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to the press conference. I said, no, I'm not going to. We're not going to give you the $1 billion.
We're not going to give you them.
You have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was 6 hours. I looked at it. I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money.
See, he just said that if the prosecutor is not getting fired, you're not getting the money. That is threatening. That is threatening.
Apples and oranges. That was a policy, that was a government saying, we're not giving you money if you have a corrupt policy.
But he just...
There is a difference.
I never heard...
There's a difference between asking a foreign government for help to investigate your election campaign.
If the full transcript comes out, if the verbatim transcript comes out, and Trump actually said that, hey, we're going to withhold foreign aid unless you investigate, then, I'm going to hold Trump accountable too, but he did not. I did not see that. But in this case, Joe Biden said it with his words. We're seeing it right now. It was in the meeting of the Council and Foreign Relations, and he's saying that unless you fire the prosecutor, you're not going to get the.
They're totally different issues. There's no comparison between what's happening there and what happened with Trump. That is the vice president saying you have a corrupt.
What if Trump said this? You would have said he should get impeached.
No, in this case, it's different. It's a different scenario. He is.
I think you're giving a different standard to
Michael, he is tying there's two government things happening here. A government prosecutor who's failing to go after corruption tied to U.S. aid. Those are legitimate governmental public policy objectives. What happened with Trump is he did withhold aid. He told the State Department to delay the transfer of $250 million, and then he asked the president of Ukraine for a favor to help him investigate Joe Biden.
And you know what? I guarantee you, if they kept investigating and if they interviewed Hunter Biden, they would not have given that money. I guarantee you that.
Well,
that's why they gave it to him, because they fired the prosecutor. Did they not? Did they fire the prosecutor or not?
We know what Trump did, and we know what Biden.
Okay, I do know that Ukraine president at that time did not have any intent to fire that prosecutor. He had every intent to fire that prosecutor because he got threatened by Joe Biden, and he even debated with him and saying, "Hey, you don't have that power. Hey, talk with the president." Didn't he say that? We just heard from what he said.
Let me ask you this question: why did Angela Merkel put pressure on the president of Ukraine to fire that prosecutor? Why did the president of France put pressure on the president of Ukraine to fire that prosecutor? Why did the prime minister of Great Britain also put pressure on the president of Ukraine to fire that prosecutor? Why did the European Union, through its executive council, put pressure on the president of Ukraine to fire the prosecutor? It's because the guy was covering up corruption.
To me, this whole Ukraine thing is Russia conspiracy theory part 2. I think to me it's the same thing. Look at this. This report is coming from CNN.
Let me tell. Read the transcript. The transcript.
I did.
You're missing.
I got that point. The LA Times, printed it out on the front page. I read it.
So let's talk about Trump rather than Biden, then.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, let's
talk about what Trump did with Ukraine.
So CNN. I don't know whether you like it. I don't like CNN, but CNN reported in May how Democratic Senators Robert Menendez, Dick Durbin, and Patrick Leahy pushed Ukraine's top prosecutor not to close 4 investigations perceived as critical to then Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia probe. And by Democrats' current logic seemingly imply that their support for U.S. aid to Ukraine was at stake. Let's
talk about Richard
seemingly
Nixon.
Implied that their support for U.S. aid to Ukraine was at stake. It was Democratic senators.
Let's talk
and
about,
CNN reported it. Wasn't Fox News.
As long as we're talking about past, let's talk about Watergate for a second. Those people who broke into the Watergate and stole information from the Democratic National Committee. As long as we're talking about stuff that's in the past, let's talk about Watergate. I want to talk about what Trump did. Let's talk about
the Watergate scandal.
I'm being facetious here, because you're talking about stuff in the past that doesn't matter anymore, and there was no criminal indication. But what we have right before us today, the House of Representatives is looking at Trump's specific behavior, and I want to talk about what did Trump do.
Okay, let's
not. I don't want to say, well, but what about Biden? What about Trump? What about the current president of the United States who sits in the White House? What did he do? So not only did he conspire with Ukraine to go after Joe Biden in a presidential race, but he's also been engaged in obstruction of justice with his attempt to cover up things for Michael Flynn when he went to Comey and said, "Please don't investigate him." He's violated.
When did he say, "Please don't investigate him"? Trump?
He says
to who? To who?
To Comey. He says,
come on. He did not say that.
He did
Jeffrey,
say that.
No. He did not say that. You know what he said?
He says
he's a good person.
Can you let him go on this one?
He didn't say. He didn't exactly say stop the investigation or anything like that. He's a good guy. Okay. He probably implied it, but he didn't. It wasn't a direct order.
That's two.
It was not a direct order.
2 impeachable offenses. Then you go with the fact that he paid off porn stars in order to cover things up for his campaign. Another.
Which one?
The $130,000 to Stormy Daniels, which she attempted to cover up a bribe to keep her quiet for his campaign.
She didn't keep quiet.
Right? She didn't. But the fact is, he paid the money. That is a violation of law.
So Obama also violated a lot of election laws, and he had to pay $300 and something thousand dollars of amount of fine. So that's what I'm saying. People don't know about this. When I talk about these things, uranium one scandal. Okay, Hillary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State, America needed her signature to give up American uranium. 20% of American uranium to Russia. They gave it to Russia. And you know how much Clinton Foundation got from Russians? $145 million.
Why can't we talk about
most people don't know this. Most people don't know this. Political junkies like me know it.
Why can't we talk about the President of the United States?
Because they're not talking about what they did. That's why.
But they're not before the public right now. Right
Because
now,
I
the
know that.
president's before
Okay,
the
for
public
instance,
right now.
if Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden, I don't think they're going to get elected. But if they get elected, they would never uncover these kind of shenanigans if they did those.
Then there's the Mueller report, which demonstrated that the president colluded with a foreign government, that they engaged
No, it
in
did
conversation.
not. Come on,
It did.
I read the Mueller report. It did not say
It did.
any collusion about that.
It didn't say collusion, but it gave all types of examples of where collusion took place.
It wasn't about. Okay, I know inside and outside. In the Mueller report, if you check that out, in the Mueller report, he mentioned about 10 possible obstruction of justice. It was there. Okay, that was there. But the collusion-wise, it wasn't there.
There's tons of collusion.
Mueller didn't mention that there was collusion. He mentioned that there was no collusion actually.
No, he did not.
And you know
he did not
what?
say no collusion.
If we talk about the Mueller report, it wasn't even Robert Mueller who wrote that, because he definitely didn't even read about it. It was Andrew Weissman, the number 2 guy. He was the main guy.
Well, he didn't say the word conclusion.
And you know where Andrew Weissman was during that election night in November of 2016? Do you know where he was? He was at the Hillary Clinton campaign.
But the reason that they didn't use
to celebrate, the breaking ceiling glass,
was
right?
because he said that the department policy does not allow him to charge a president, so he did not accuse him of any crimes because he was not allowed to do so under departmental policies.
You and I will never probably agree on whether.
What about the president's abuse of policy when he pardoned Joe Arpaio, the sheriff of?
I think he should have been pardoned. Yeah, I think he should have been pardoned.
The guy was engaged in illegal conduct.
No, I think Obama just hated him to his guts. And
Obama did everything too. That was the courts in Arizona.
Yeah, Jeffrey, but
okay.
I don't think.
I'll just give you a whole handful of impeachable offenses.
I don't think the Michael Flynn thing was impeachable at all. I think what they did was very heinous. That they wiretapped. They pretty much wiretapped a foreign, right? They uncovered. Okay, what they did was actually illegal. They were not supposed to unmask Michael Flynn like that. He's an American citizen, but somebody did, and they leaked that information to the New York Times, and that's where it came out, right?
Michael Flynn violated the law. He was engaged with foreign government. He didn't disclose it.
Is that the Logan law? Is that the Logan law you're talking about, right? You're talking about the Logan law. Then if you talk about that Logan law issue,
what about Hillary?
Then what about the Iran deal? This is the current thing. I'm not talking about the past. Let's talk about the current. Trump got rid of the Iran deal. Whether you agree with it or not, that's what the current president did, right? Isn't Donald Trump the 45th president of the United States, and he decided to rip off Iran deal? But after that, John Kerry, where did he go? He went to Iran to influence, the Iranian president, saying, he was interrupting what the current president was doing. So he was also against the Logan Act. And let's talk about the Logan Act. Nobody has been prosecuted with Logan Act for the past 150 years. So why only Michael Flynn has to pay for that?
Michael Flynn was going to be the top security. He was going to be the national security advisor, and he broke the law.
This is just political hack.
He was engaged with foreign governments.
This whole thing is a political witch hunt.
It's a matter of law. It's a matter of law.
You and I are not going to agree on this one. I'm pretty sure. So, what do you think is going to happen from here on out? Is Trump going to get kicked out of the White House? Is that what you predict? Let's talk about reality. Okay, the right says this. We have the independents saying certain things. By the way, there was a poll of 65% of independents against impeachment, by the way. So, what do you think is going to happen from here on out? The Democrats want him to get impeached. What do you think is going to happen?
So, whether or not they will be successful, I think they will be successful in impeaching him in the House.
Of course.
It will.
They have the majority, right?
It's unclear what's going to happen in the Senate. As more information comes out, depending on who the whistleblower is, there's some speculation that it could be a very high level.
By the way, that whistleblower is a huge anti-Trump guy. That's what has been revealed.
So if that whistleblower turns out to be Dan...
It's a lady, right, actually?
It could turn out to be Dan Coates, the former intelligence chief.
Coates?
There's been some speculation about that. If it is him, it's a totally different game. He was a hardcore right-wing senator from Indiana, and if he's the guy who's blowing the whistle, it could be doomsday for the president, because he's a very credible source. But it depends on whether the Republicans in Congress and the Senate.
To me, I gotta break in. To me, the whistleblower he or she is not going to be a game changer. Because this whistleblower was not a direct source. Even that whistleblower, to me, I think I heard that it's a lady, I'm not sure about that. She said that she heard it from somebody. This whole thing is always about hearsay, even with Brett Kavanaugh thing. Even with Brett Kavanaugh. The guy who informed this,
let's stay with the
to me, it's the same thing. You know, they fabricated this story that, you know, somebody pushed Brett Kavanaugh and somehow something got into a lady's hand, right? And the guy who informed that information didn't even interview.
So
that guy did an interview with
Brett Kavanaugh's not
NYT.
involved in the whistleblower thing.
Of course not. I'm just comparing. Okay.
I'm just trying to stick on this.
Okay, let's stick with this one.
Stick with the whistleblower. So
to me, what I'm saying is it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Even with a whistleblower, he or she heard this information from somebody else. He or she was not the direct source.
So I think we could.
What I'm saying is he or she was not the one who eavesdropped on them.
So we could stipulate
on
that,
Trump
that
and
you
the Ukraine
always
president.
see analogies to past actions, which I absolutely reject. I don't see those analogies whatsoever. But we don't know who the whistleblower is. We don't know what they've known yet, and so we can't say it's irrelevant.
I don't think it's going to be Dan Coates.
You don't know until you know. So a lot of the stuff is going to come out in the investigation. I think what is important right now is that this president has violated the law. He has engaged in high crimes and misdemeanors so many times.
It sounds
that
like
the government has an obligation to hold him to account.
Jeffrey, it sounds like a wish list. It sounds like a wish list. What you're saying right now.
It's not a wish list. It's a list of facts of things that.
But you don't know whether it's Dan Coates or not, right?
No, I mean I'm not talking about him. He's irrelevant. The duty and the constitutional obligation of members of Congress is to make sure that no one is above the law, to hold them to account. And keep in mind that impeachment is not a criminal process, it's a political process. So the standards are not whether you broke the law, it's whether or not they determined that you have violated your the intent of the Constitution, and I think that he has.
Okay, what's numbers between Republicans and Democrats on the Senate side?
It's pretty close. It's going to require 2/3 vote.
No, currently.
Oh, it's
53-47, right? So I don't think it's going to go through. I think the Republicans are all going to be behind Trump. I don't think they're ever going to allow this to happen. I would even say probably some Democrats on the Senate might
so,
you know. We're not even sure whether all Democrats are going to vote for impeachment. You know, like the Hawaiian Congresswoman, Tulsi Gabbard, who's also a Democratic presidential candidate, she said she's not going to vote for this.
But we have also heard from Senator Ben Sasse, we've heard from Mitt Romney, who have expressed grave concerns about this.
Mitt Romney, to me, is a rhino. He's a Republican.
It doesn't matter. He's on the Republican side of the aisle.
You know how much Republicans really hate him?
Ben Sasse, though, is not a rhino. Ben Sasse is a pretty right-wing conservative, and he's raising the issues about his concern about what happened in Ukraine.
So you think it could persuade enough numbers to make it over 50? But you know how many votes you need, right?
No,
in the Senate side.
It's a lot. It may not,
2/3, right? 60 votes, right? I don't think they're going to reach that number.
It may not reach.
It's never going to reach that number. Come on, you know it's not going to happen. This impeachment, this is just Russia collusion part 2. They always talk about collusion, Russia collusion. You know, racist. They go all the way around. You know what Hillary said. You know, they're all Islamophobe, homophobe. They always play this identity politics,
but the Democrats cannot.
The Democrats can never win. They can never beat Trump. I can say that.
Let me say
I think he's on his way to get more than 400
let me say that,
electorates.
Let me jump in.
And they know that they can't beat him in the ballot box, so they want to impeach him.
Let me say something for a second. The Democrats' obligation to do their job should not be guided by what the Senate's going to do. They needed to vote on the evidence which is before them, irrespective of what the Senate decides to do. They shouldn't say, we're not going to go through this process because the Senate won't go along with this and we won't be successful. They have a piece of the puzzle, and their job is to take care of that piece of the puzzle.
Okay, I really get your point, Jeffrey. But what I'm saying is, let's talk about reality. To me, I would say, okay, for instance, if Hillary was a president and the Democrats held the Senate, I don't think the impeachment could have gone through. You know, if the Republicans held the House, you know what I'm saying? You know, it's a political game. You're right. It's about politics. Impeachment is a political process. To me, they don't have enough votes to go to. Let's just go through. go through.
So here's what could happen.
Actually, some on the Trump side, Trump people's side, and also the conservative side, think that this whole thing was a setup. Because now people are interested.
Trump thinks everything's a setup.
Now people are interested in what Joe Biden did to save his son. He threatened the Ukraine president to fire the prosecutor who was about to interview Hunter Biden.
You know what
and the 1.5, he had a $1.5 billion deal with China too, right?
You know what the Joe Biden thing is?
And they got $3-4 million.
So for President Trump and the Republicans, the Joe Biden issue is called the shiny key philosophy. It's like, don't look at the President Trump, look over here. Look at Biden.
Because we're talking about Joe Biden issue. Didn't he try to, what you're saying is Trump pressured to find out what Joe Biden did, right? So it's all related. To me, it seems like Trump planned this whole thing out. That's how I see it. I think he politically, I would say this was a political calculation on the Trump side.
Here's where impeachment is, the process is important. So the Democrats are going to go through a thorough process. I think it only requires a majority in the House to.
The House, yeah. So like same as what happened to Bill Clinton, but it didn't go through the Senate back
but what's going to happen is through this process.
And you know what Nancy Pelosi?
Let me finish my thought first. They're going to go through this process, and they're going to identify this laundry list of high crimes and misdemeanors, not just Ukraine, but for the last 2.5 years, actions that the president has taken.
What kind of high crimes are you talking about and misdemeanors? I don't see any. I don't see any.
Well, we can go back to that a second, but they're going to talk about these things, and they're going to provide evidence through this process to the American people. If the Senate rejects it, these issues are now going to be public record, and they will impact people's decision on how they vote next year. And I think that's going to be important.
So what you're saying is at least this impeachment process would persuade enough Americans, probably in the swing states, so that it's going to swing to the Democratic side on the presidential election, right? That's what you're saying.
Let me also say, I don't believe that you should do this for political purposes. You should do it because there is cause behind these issues, and in talking about that cause, people will see the evidence and they will make a decision based on what they see. It should never be done for the purpose of gaining electoral votes. But the natural benefit will be that there will be votes from it because people are going to see how egregious this president has been.
Okay, let me give you my prediction because you gave yours. I think there's going to be a huge blowback against the Democrats to such a degree that I don't think they're going to be able to recover. I think many people are waking up. I have a lot of most of my friends are Democrats because I live here, right, in California. I would say like 8 out of 10, really. So I consider myself independent. I went back and forth. I was a huge supporter of Obama. Back before that, Bush. I think there's going to be a huge blowback. The people are waking up. They know that what the mainstream media. Okay, let's not say that it's fake news, but they have misreported or made so many mistakes, whether it was Kavanaugh or the Russia collusion thing. They made so many mistakes that many people started to doubt it. I see it from my friends. One friend, he's a huge Democrat supporter, and he told me, why do I have to read 17 articles to find out what the truth is? Yeah, I told him, it became that kind of era right now. It's like the fake news era right now. This Trump era is the fake news era. To me, it's one and the same. So I believe that there's going to be a huge blowback. I think the Republicans are going to take the House too. I think they're going to win all three, the presidential and the Senate and the House. And I think Nancy Pelosi should be very careful about this whole thing. I think she has been persuaded by these far left loons, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And you know what I'm talking about, the crew, the squad, right? She's a newcomer, right? Isn't this like her first year right now, right? I don't understand why Nancy Pelosi is always kind of being shaky around her. I don't think this should have even gone through this impeachment process, to be honest with you. But I think after Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez criticized the Democratic Party, that was pretty much criticizing Nancy Pelosi. Then, Nancy Pelosi said there should be some kind of an impeachment process. So okay, let me finish. So what I think is people are waking up. They're waking up to the fake news. They're waking up to the news bias, because that's where most of their information is coming from, right? Where can they get their political news? Whether it's Fox or CNN or MSNBC, pretty much we know where they're going to get those news, right? To me, people are waking up. You can see it from the ratings. CNN and MSNBC, their ratings has dropped dramatically ever since the Robert Mueller report came out. So to me, and that friend, I have plenty of friends who tell me personally, but they wouldn't publicly say it, but they tell me, man, they really think the news media is crooked.
You and I will agree on that, and I agree that there's enormous amount of fake news, but I think 99% of the fake news is being generated by the President of the United States. Even on this Ukraine issue, he's told 2 or 3 lies within a couple days. He first said it didn't happen, then he said it did happen, but it didn't mean anything. Then he took full credit for it, and then then they tried to stifle the transcript. His rationale changed multiple times over several days, and that's typical of the way this president acts. He lies incessantly. What he calls fake news is any news that criticizes him, he calls fake.
I don't believe that. I think there is a truth there. When he mentions fake news, there has been some fake stuff inside there, like the Brett Kavanaugh thing. They didn't mention about it, right? They spread fake news by omission.
But I don't agree that that's fake news. I think those were credible.
But the girl couldn't remember it.
Right? She was drunk. She admitted she was drunk. It was a witness somebody who saw it is the one.
Who was that guy who saw it? Because there has been report that he didn't even see it. He heard it from.
He was a classmate who said he was there.
Yeah, the classmate. Who does he work for? He was a lawyer for Bill and Hillary Clinton, and he was a huge donor for Barack Obama, which means that he had a political agenda.
How do you know that?
Because he's a huge donor of Obama and Hillary Clinton. They didn't. But as a reporter, as a news, as
that doesn't mean he didn't see it.
Okay. But as a newspaper reporter, you're supposed to put those facts in there.
Oh, well,
but he didn't. He purposely omitted it. And even the NYT reporter, you know who he blamed? What I'm saying is, what I'm criticizing is not him. I'm criticizing the New York Times. They ran with it. They ran with that story. And do you know who criticized them for that? Politico and AP criticized NYT for spreading that fake news.
He was a credible. He wasn't.
They are permanently damaged. Source. I would say the New York Times is permanently damaged by that kind of shenanigan. It was a shenanigan.
I don't see that. So they're basically saying anybody who saw things that were wrong, it's fake news. The fact that this guy was in the room and saw this occur, the fact that he maybe didn't.
No, what I'm saying is the New York Times reporters, those 2 female reporters, they did not even interview her. They didn't even interview her. I think I would have, if I'm going to write a hit piece like that, that Brett Kavanaugh accused him of sexual assault, I would interview her, but they didn't even interview her.
Let's get back to
the guy, because you talked about fake news stuff, so I had to go there because that's the most recent. That was last week. Can you believe it? It was last week.
What you're calling
they were talking about last week. They were talking about last week.
On the other side.
Okay, Jeffrey. They were talking about last week. They were talking about let's impeach Kavanaugh. This week they're talking about let's impeach Trump. They're doing this whole insanity over and over again. I guarantee you nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen.
But the reason they're saying they should impeach Kavanaugh is because Kavanaugh lied before the United States Senate when he was confirmed.
What did he lie about?
He lied about his behavior.
About what?
About these actions he had with
Then how about Christine Blasey Ford? To me, I think she's a huge liar. Okay, Christine Blasey Ford is a huge liar. Her former boyfriend sent a letter to Congress, and she said, that she can't live in a small space. You remember what she said, but they found out that she actually lived in like a 500, square feet house. The letter that he sent to Congress that she's pretty much a liar and all that.
Well, I think that's nonsense. And plus, we're getting far away from the big issues here, which is the President of the United States committed treason.
And did you? No. Okay, let's talk about this. Christine Blasey Ford's lawyer. He said in one speech that they didn't like Trump because of his they didn't like Kavanaugh because of his pro-life stance. So he had a political agenda, didn't he?
Everybody in politics has a political agenda. Everybody in politics brings their experiences and the things that they observe. Pardon me?
He's not supposed to be. He was Christine Blasey Ford's lawyer, right?
Kavanaugh was a political hack. He had never practiced law.
How about RBG? How about RBG? Is she a political hack?
Pardon?
Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
She was a pretty well-respected attorney for years. Of course, she's not a political hack.
I can name tons of people who think that she's a political hack.
He never practiced law. He was always a political aide to the Republican Party and to Republican politicians. And it's the president's entitlement to appoint who he wants.
Okay, let me give you a specific reason, a specific example of what Christine Blasey Ford lied about. She said that you know, the lie detector thing. She said she's not an expert. But she actually taught her friend how to pass an FBI test.
Let's talk about what Kavanaugh did when he was in college. Let's talk about what he did with this other woman and the fact that he failed to disclose that. He lied about it.
About what?
About this assault that he had against women. And the fact that he was in college probably could have been something.
All right, okay, I think
you could have excused what he did in college.
We talked about Kavanaugh so many times. Let's put that to rest a little bit. But you know what, Nancy Pelosi and Jerry Nadler and Maxine Waters, all these people said back in 1998 when the Republicans wanted to impeach Clinton. I was against that. I was against it. I thought he was not supposed to get impeached for that. But you know what they said? Because the Democrats, they said impeachment is politically wrong and legally wrong. They said it on C-SPAN. They said this is completely wrong. There should be no, the presidents should get voted out, not get impeached like this. But why are they doing a somersault, 180, and now want Trump to be impeached?
Let me talk about politicians in general. So Mitch McConnell, when the Democrats were in charge, was against deficits. Now the Republicans in the White House, he's for deficits. So
no, he never said that. I've never heard him saying that I'm for deficits.
He didn't say he's for it, but they've added $1 trillion to the federal.
But didn't Obama? Obama said the same thing. That he's who is for deficit?
So here's my point. My point is, politicians say things when they're in power. They say different things when they're out of power. So the fact that Maxine Waters may have had an opinion on impeachment as it relates to Bill Clinton, that may be different the way she's approaching it with.
What I'm saying is the same thing with the Ukraine thing. The Republicans or the conservatives don't see it as you see it. But the Democrats also don't see it as how the conservative or the Republicans see it. So that's why I'm saying this impeachment thing is going to get stuck in the Senate. It's not going to happen, and there's going to be a huge blowback. Didn't the Republicans suffer a huge blowback during the impeachment process? Did they or not? They did, right?
I think the thing you know about me is that I try to stick to the facts that are before us. I try not to inject a lot of opinion. I base my opinions based on how.
Me too. So
the evidence, facts. The facts that we see with the president in Ukraine seems black and white to me. He talked to a foreign leader and saying, "Can you help us do a favor?" Looking into my political opponent for 2020.
But in that transcript, he never mentioned about foreign aid to Ukraine. Did he mention that? I didn't see that in the transcript. Did I miss that?
But that issue can be severed. The fact is, he says, "I have a favor. Can you help me with Joe Biden?" That's one fact. The fact that a second fact is that he delayed the delivery of foreign aid a couple of weeks ago in anticipation of this phone call.
Is that more heinous, or is Joe Biden asking the Ukraine president to fire the prosecutor to stop investigation towards his son? Is that more heinous? And he pretty much said it with his words in front of in a public outing that he said that fire that guy in 6 hours. If they don't fire him, they're not going to get the $1 billion.
But his statements
did he say $10 billion or $1 billion?
His statements were not in relation to his son. His statements were in relation to a unified Western European pressure campaign against the Ukrainians to fire a prosecutor who was protecting corruption because they did not want to.
There has been reports that prosecutor was very righteous. He wanted to root out all the corruptions. The Attorney General. So there's both.
I think you're exactly the opposite of that one.
So what do you think is going to happen from here on out? Next, do you think Elizabeth Warren is going to take jump ahead because of this scandal? Anyway, Joe Biden is involved in this kind of. Nobody knew about it. Now people know about it.
I don't know who's going to benefit from this. I think clearly, Biden has not been growing in the polls. It's possible that this discussion could compromise his success. Warren has momentum. Biden has never had momentum. He just had a pretty fixed piece of the electorate, which seems to be staying stable. So right now, as a snapshot today, Warren seems to have all the momentum behind her. We're going to see a bunch of others drop out in the next few weeks, I think. So it'll be interesting. But I think what happens on the presidential side, what's going to be more interesting to watch is to see how information rolls out into the impeachment hearings. And here's what's going to happen now. So the president and the administration have been stonewalling on releasing all types of information claiming executive privilege. When there is an impeachment hearing, that executive privilege no longer counts. The Congress takes the place of the Supreme Court in many ways, and they are entitled to all the information, and the White House cannot stonewall it.
Yeah.
So I believe that there's a lot of this information that they've not been releasing for years that, unless they find some BS reason to stonewall again, if that comes out, I think it's going to be very damning for the administration.
Can I just ask you this? Do you
Sure.
think do you believe that's true or not? When Donald Trump, when he was president-elect, and he was in Trump Tower meeting potential cabinet members, and there has been report that NSA director at that time, Mike Rogers, he secretly met with Trump without Obama knowing. Obama was the president, and he told him, "You're being wiretapped here. Don't do any interviews." And after that, Trump started doing interviews in his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey. Do you think that report is true or not?
I'm not familiar with that report. I am familiar with the fact that the intelligence agencies were concerned about Trump's and the Trump campaign's interaction with the Russians, and the fact that they were wiretapping him seemed to be within the realm of their responsibilities.
So to me, that whole thing was really wrong. To me, I think Obama is the most corrupt administration. I think to wiretap a potential, candidate, or Republican candidate, presidential candidate like that, to me, it's completely wrong. The Russia collusion thing, I think they colluded with Russia. Where did Fusion GPS get all those information about Trump hiring 2 prostitutes in Moscow? They got it from Russians, right? Why don't they see that as collusion?
Let me ask you.
What they're doing is
Let me ask you a question.
It's hypocrisy.
So,
at its highest form.
So let me offer this scenario and question for you. So the FBI, intelligence agencies, say that we have gotten information through back channels that Russian leaders, Russian officials are meeting with the Trump campaign. We have heard things that we're suspicious of. It is their job, it is part of their responsibilities to look for foreign interference. And the fact that Donald Trump was the president-elect or a candidate is irrelevant. If they believed he could have been engaged in espionage, part of their job is to investigate. There was nothing unlawful or wrong about them making that decision based on those facts. I doubt that I've not heard anything that said that Obama said, "Go and investigate this guy."
Okay.
The intelligence agencies responded to evidence that something was going on, and they were trying to find out that we needed to know, as Americans, we need to know whether the next president is colluding with a foreign government.
I think this whole thing is tied up with that. The Ukraine thing is tied up with that. You know why? In that transcript, did you see that line about CrowdStrike? Do you know what CrowdStrike is?
No.
CrowdStrike is a company that the FBI hired. It's in Irvine. It's a security company, a private company. And they were the one who said that DNC and John Podesta, you know who John Podesta is, John Podesta, server was hacked by. I don't believe in CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike board members were all filled up with Democratic donors, and Eric Schmidt was also the board member. He wanted to be the campaign manager for Hillary Clinton. So to me, they were politically bent. I don't understand why the FBI couldn't investigate it themselves. Why did they have to hire CrowdStrike? So Trump was talking to the Ukraine president about CrowdStrike. I want to know what was going on with CrowdStrike. Because you know why? There has been a report that Ukraine has all the 33,000 emails that Hillary Clinton have gotten rid of. So I think it's all tied up. I want to know. To me, that was the part that catched my eyes
at the moment,
about CrowdStrike.
I am most concerned about actions of this president, of this president's administration. This guy has had more people indicted and going to jail than any president in the history of this nation. It's been the most corrupt administration we have ever had.
But what did they go to jail for? It wasn't because of the collusion thing. It was because of perjury, right? Perjury about their past behaviors, like Paul Manafort. You're talking about the tax evasion and all that, right? It wasn't about the Russia collusion. It wasn't directly. It happened 12, 13 years ago. It wasn't related to Trump campaign.
Question. So the president said when he was elected, he was going to hire the best people.
Oh yeah, I would give you that. He did not keep that promise. On that front, he didn't hire the best people. I absolutely agree with you on that.
He hired people who were liars.
But you know what? How can you be perfect? How can you know everybody? Of course, that's a political rhetoric. You know that. Everybody's saying, I'm going to hire the the best people. And everybody says that. Don't you say that?
So-
like in your campaign, wouldn't you say, I'm trying to, hire the best people?
I did hire the best people. But if you look
But actually, Jeffrey did a great job in the county. I said, I have to give you that. I'm not about left or
I
right.
appreciate
He
that.
did a great job. That's why I supported you. I mean, whether you're left or right, you were anti-corruption, and everybody's behind you on that. So
I appreciate you saying so.
Yeah. So are we going to end with that?
Let's end on a high note.
But with the FISA thing, I think it's going to come out. The Inspector General Michael Horowitz, he's investigating this, and there has been reports that the process of getting these wiretaps approved, there has been some illegality regarding that. And Michael Horowitz is going to come out. It's called the IG report. It's going to come out next month, I think, and that's going to unravel a whole bunch of can of worms. That's how I see it. There has been a report also that James Comey couldn't get the wiretap approved by the FISA court. So that is why they used that Steele dossier, the thing that we talked about, to get, the wiretap approval. It worked. They asked for overextension 4 times, 3 of them by James Comey, 1 of them by Sally Yates, by then acting Attorney General. So let's see what happens. I mean, if there's some illegality or not. You might be right, I might be right.
I truly believe that if all the information is released, if the American public has an opportunity to see everything, all the controversies of the last couple of years is put before them,
Okay.
I believe that Donald Trump will walk out with handcuffs.
All right, okay. We'll end with that. Okay, well, that's our show for today. Our show is not about left or right. It's about right or wrong. To stay up to date with our latest videos, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.